So I guess we get into football then. All right, football season's coming back this Thursday, ladies and gentlemen, or dependent on what side of the world you live in. I speak from the United States' point of view, obviously, because football's, or American football is kind of our thing. It's kind of named after us. Got the program. Football season comes back this Thursday. Thursday night football starts off against Eagles-Falcons. So that should be fun. I don't think Carson Wentz is going to be starting, so that's going to be a little bit of a sad point because I was looking forward to seeing if Carson Wentz could stay healthy for a season, and if that ACL wasn't going to affect him in the long term as much as it has other individuals. But yes, football season starts this Thursday, and by this Sunday, we will be able to see the starting point of a lot of the big stories coming into the league this year. Obviously, my favorite story of all, Jimmy Garoppolo, the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Is he the real deal or is he not? Please, dear God, let him be. Also, I get to look forward to seeing a bunch of guys in their next year or in their first year kind of, start evolving and start developing. Obviously, Trent Taylor, receiver, Greg Kittle. It's Kittle. I think it's Greg Kittle. I always I screw up his first name, but I always call him Kittle. So, tight end, Greg Kittle. We get Reuben Foster back. We got, I would hope he stays healthy. Solomon Thomas back, of course. Jerick McKinnon, sadly, out for the season, so that's bad since we don't really have much of a running game aside from Matt Breida now. But, nevertheless, we get to see storylines like that play out. We get to see the storyline of Joe Flacco's final year with the Baltimore Ravens before they make the switch over to Lamar Jackson. Jesus Christ. Lamar Jackson, most likely next season or probably by the end of this season. We get to see what Patrick Mahomes can do in Kansas City now that Alex Smith is gone. And we get to see what Alex Smith can do in Washington now that Kirk Cousins is gone. And we can see what Kirk Cousins can do in Minnesota now that Sam Bradford and Case Keenum are gone. Now we can see what Case Keenum can do in Denver and Sam Bradford can do in Arizona now that Trevor Siemian and Sam Bradford are gone. So obviously we're working our way down the ladder as we continue on. We get to see other storylines play out, such as, is the reign of terror in New England going to continue on for another season, or are they going to start to be quelled by a flurry of individuals? Is Ezekiel Elliott's influence and involvement in the Dallas Cowboys offensive unit, is that going to be something that makes them a playoff form again? Are we going to see Aaron Rodgers single-handedly lead the Green Bay Packers back into the playoffs? Are we going to see Matt Patricia come from the Belichick coaching tree and actually fucking pull it off? Are we going to see a revamped Chicago Bears offense and defense be able to succeed in a litany of trouble in the NFC North? Who's going to come out on top of the NFC West? Is it going to be the hotshot 49ers, or is it going to be the dominant super team of sorts in the Los Angeles Rams? Are the Los Angeles Chargers going to be able to keep their momentum from last season going into this season and possibly pick up a win over the entire AFC West? Are we going to be able to see teams like Jacksonville be able to pull it out again now that the Indianapolis Colts have Andrew Luck back, the Houston Texans have Deshaun Watson back, and the Tennessee Titans are the Tennessee Titans? Are we going to be able to see Deshaun Watson come back from the ACL injury that he sustained last season as the Houston Texans starting quarterback? Or are we going to be able to see him, really flourish at all? Is he going to be affected by that ACL injury that we have seen affect so many others? Are we going to see John Gruden and his stupid fucking football end up taking charge in the AFC West that's kind of sort of stacked? Denver has a damn good defense and a pretty eligible quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs are the Kansas City Chiefs. They always surprise somehow. And the Los Angeles Chargers were hotshot going into the end of last year like the 49ers. So what makes you think that they're not going to be able to do it this year? Obviously, the AFC West is a huge contender, and while I may believe that the Raiders are moving backwards, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do this season at the very, very, very least. The Tennessee Titans have Mario. Fucking hell, I'm getting all my shit fucked up. We have got Marcus Mariota coming back for the Tennessee Titans, obviously, for another season. He did pretty damn well last year. He was able to finally bring the Tennessee Titans back to the playoffs. Is he going to be able to do that again this year? Is the offense going to be actually something to worth watching, not to take a nap through? Are we going to be able to see teams like the Cincinnati Bengals quell over their Marvin Lewis bullshit and be able to make something of themselves. Are we going to be able to see the Miami Dolphins come back out of just irrelevancy with Ryan Tannehill at the quarterback spot? I think a lot of Dolphins fans last season probably praised Jay Cutler for coming back because it was a little bit of a break for Ryan Tannehill before he came back this year. We're going to be able to see the Jets and Sam Darnold take over. Are we going to be able to see Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills take over? Are we going to be able to see the Eagles have a repeat? Is Saquon Barkley going to run over everybody as the New York Giants' new rookie halfback, the same a la Ezekiel Elliott? Are we going to be able to see teams like the New Orleans Saints or the Atlanta Falcons go back to past glory and make a big run for the Super Bowl once again? Are we going to be able to see the Carolina Panthers do the same thing with a little bit of a developed offense? Are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to sit by and still assume that Jameis Winston is the future? I don't know. And at the same time, are the Arizona Cardinals going to be able to shake this retirement home feeling that they've had? Are the Seattle Seahawks going to be able to get to 8-8? And obviously the biggest story of all in the NFL this year, are the Cleveland Browns going to be able to do something? Is Baker Mayfield going to come in? Is Hugh Jackson finally going to fall upon the sword? Is Tyrod Taylor going to be able to actually stay healthy for an entire season and give the Cleveland Browns one quarterback this year in total? Is Carlos Hyde going to be able to make something of himself going from San Francisco to Cleveland? Is the defense going to be able to work around everything? Is Myles Garrett going to fucking show up? I have no fucking clue. David Njoku? I mean, obviously, we saw last season when Joe Thomas ended up skipping town. He retired, obviously, very much deserved. Fantastic career. But you got a bunch of these stories in the NFL this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. And obviously, this Thursday and this Sunday, we're going to be able to see the climax and payoff a lot of those stories in terms of the fact that we're going to be able to see them get underway for the first time in, 7 months? That's fantastic. But another thing I want to talk about is the fact that there are 5 coaches in my mind that are really on the hot seat. Now, obviously, I excluded coaches that are almost always on the hot seat, or at least have been on the hot seat for like the past 3 or 4 years. So obviously, and I don't mean hot seat in terms of the team's hot seat, but in terms of the fans wanting them out, the fans obviously wanting a change in head coach because they don't see a lot of stability in terms of long term. So obviously, I excluded coaches like Jason Garrett. I excluded coaches like obviously Jason Garrett of the Dallas Cowboys. I excluded coaches like Mike Tomlin of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I also excluded coaches in their first year, so Matt Patricia of the Detroit Lions, Andy Reid of the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, I would want a little bit of a change in terms of the playoffs. But I have 5 coaches that I think haven't done too much with their team in terms of their impact in the team overall over the past couple of years, and why this season, if they don't make something of their team, I think they're skipping town. And I think you can make a very, very, very good reason for every single one of them. Obviously, we're going to start with number 5, and I think that's Jay Gruden of the Washington Redskins. One playoff appearance in the NFC East over the past, 4 or 5 years? And primarily because Kirk Cousins was the starting quarterback. And while he may have turned the ball over quite a bit, he was a damn good starting quarterback for that team. He just gelled, and they obviously didn't want to pay him. I don't think they trusted him. I think that was made very clear. I think Jay Gruden had a say in that. They aimed for an off-season win again, as they most often do. However, this season they're playing in an NFC East that is stacked with a Cowboys team that could very well go back to playoff form with Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. Obviously, we can talk about the New York Giants from last season all you want, but now we have Saquon Barkley. We can hope that all their receivers won't get injured in the same goddamn week. Odell Beckham Jr. should be able to be have a lot of that load carried off of his back from Saquon Barkley, so obviously we can have Eli Manning target Odell Beckham Jr. less frequently, but also more impactful this season. And overall, their defensive unit isn't too shabby either, and obviously we can get into the Eagles all day long. Carson Wentz can come back at any point in time this season. I hope Nick Foles does well. I hope he doesn't regress from last season. But even if he does, you've still got a stacked defensive unit. The receiving core is fucking believable. Obviously Nelson Aguilar, you got Alshon Jeffrey. That's just a team made for the postseason. And Washington is Washington. I don't think they would be able to get past Dallas if they tried. So that's a big discussion there. But I don't believe Jay Gruden makes it out of this season because I don't believe that Washington makes it past the last place spot in the NFC East. It's too stacked. And sadly, I think this is the end of the road for Jay Gruden, though. For a lot of Redskin fans, are probably very happy that it's the end of the road for Jay Gruden. I think the only thing that they would rather have as the end of the road rather than Jay Gruden is the end of the road for Dan Snyder. And that's not a surprise. Fourth spot is Todd Bowles of the New York Jets. Past couple of years, he's been reasonable. I like Todd Bowles primarily for the fact that he has to work with a lot of bullshit. He gets handed a lot of bullshit through chance over the season, and he's still able to work with it. He had a really shitty unit last year that a lot of people thought were going to be one of the bottom of the league, and yet they managed to make it close to 500 last season. They were significant overachievers. They had no right to win that many games, and I think the Jets fans would agree with me. They would have much rather had a solid first-round pick or a very early first-round pick than to just do what the Jets did last year and fail to tank. Todd Bowles, I think he's a very scrappy head coach. I think he's a very makeshift head coach as well. I think he gets handed a lot of bullshit through injuries, through chance, I think. Even last minute comebacks from teams really fuck him over and add another loss to the win-loss column. But he still manages to bounce back. He still manages to get the team riled up to be able to walk into battle and make a compelling argument for a win and actually stay in there long term. I like Todd Bowles as a head coach, and I definitely like him in terms of a guy that may not have a lot of talent to work with on a roster, but can still utilize whatever talent he has to make a push for the playoffs. I like him, but that does not mean that the Jets fans like him, or does that mean that the Jets management team like him. And I'm not really surprised. He's worked with quarterbacks like Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Josh McCown, all of which have been good and all right in their own right, but at the same time, I mean, you're talking about Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Josh McCown. Josh McCown is a journeyman quarterback that's a very decent quarterback. I like the dude at quarterback, but he's getting on the older side. He's going to be a mentor to Sam Darnold, no questions asked, especially now that Teddy Bridgewater's in New Orleans. Obviously, you've worked with Geno Smith, who is he's Geno Smith, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick, who can be good and can be horrible on the flip of a hat. It really depends on whether he brushed his mustache that day or not. So when it comes down to it, I like Todd Bowles as a head coach. I think he's a great individual when you don't have a lot of talent on the roster, or especially when your roster is aging like it was a couple of seasons back. But that does not necessarily mean the Jets fans like him, nor does the Jets management team like him, and I can see why. He hasn't brought much stability to the team. He hasn't brought much fucking wealth to the team. He hasn't been able to make it to the playoffs. He was able to make a sort of push late into the season last year, but that went nowhere. He was able to make a push a couple of years ago, but that went nowhere. So at the end of the day, I think in terms of the fact that just because I like him, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody likes him, and while I like him for what he's able to do with the little resource that he has, I don't like the fact that he wasn't able to get the job done for the past, 4 years that he's been in as the head coach of the Jets. That's my take on that. Third place, or in terms of the third position in which I think is on the hot seat in the NFL, Dirk Koetter of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think the management team for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers think that Jameis Winston is the future, and I think they're starting to question Dirk Koetter, and I think they're starting to question Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, on one hand, he's suspended for the first 3 games of the season, so unless Ryan Fitzpatrick combs his mustache, I don't think they're making out of the first 3 games of the season with a very good position to work with, especially in an NFC South division, in which the Carolina Panthers are obviously making another come-up. The New Orleans Saints are fucking petrifying, and the Atlanta Falcons are fucking primed for another Super Bowl berth. It's crazy how stacked the NFC South and NFC East are. They're insane. And then you have, obviously, Washington in the NFC East and now Tampa Bay in the NFC South struggling with the fact that they could definitely be a playoff team in a division that was a little bit more even balanced, but it's a stacked division in both cases, and both head coaches have been pretty lackluster in seasons past. So this being their last season to do it in a division that's so stacked, you wouldn't assume they'd be able to break within 4 games of third place. That's a big problem, especially with Dirk Koetter, underachieving even in years in which he's been able to achieve. He assembled a team last season comprised of Jameis Winston, who was supposed to break out last season. Don't know what happened. Doug Martin came back. I've always been a fan of him in terms of being a great running back. Deshaun Jackson came in. You have Mike Evans still there. And the defensive side of the ball is no joke either. But with Tampa Bay, it's always kind of been an underachieving mess. I've been wondering why Tampa Bay was always stuck with Jameis Winston. I never watched a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneer games, but I always saw Jameis Winston in the backfield, and I was thinking to myself, well, do you really think he's the answer? Because what I'm seeing right now, it doesn't really say so. He's a turnover machine. He's not able to get it done late in the game, and on top of that, he's not able to rile the troops. I don't think in positions in which you need to be motivated that he's able to motivate the team. I don't think he's a leader. I think he's a scrappy football player, but I don't think he's a guy that you would necessarily assume would be able to lead a franchise to Super Bowl glory. He hasn't been able to do that in the past, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years that he's been. I think it was 3 or 4 years that he's been that he's been the starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Dirk Cutter's kind of just sat there and watched. I don't think Dirk Cutter's really been able to do much, and I don't think he's improved his players very much. The significantly underachieved last year when we thought they were all going to do fantastic and break out in the NFC South. That didn't happen, and I don't think it's going to happen this season, and I think Dirk Cutter's on the chopping block in everybody's eyes, really. Hugh Jackson of the Cleveland Browns, I think that was coming up no matter what the case was going to be. Hugh Jackson, he's a great coordinator. I think he's a good head coach when he's got talent. This is probably the most talented that the Cleveland Browns have had in terms of roster since, probably since 2003, 2004. And then on top of that, of course, the Steelers are kind of breaking down. Big Ben's in his final couple of years. Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco. He'll get switched out for Lamar Jackson soon enough. John Harbaugh is kind of on his way out as well. In terms of the fact that I don't think they can underachieve the next couple of years and still have John Harbaugh as the head coach. And Marvin Lewis, of course, is Marvin Lewis. I think he'll be dead and buried in a coffin. And yet on the sidelines for a Bengals game, even after his death, they'll just have a screen of his corpse in the coffin. Or maybe they'll just have a live feed of the coffin, and on the coffin it'll just have a play. It'll have a little screen on the coffin, and the screen will have a play or something like that. And he'll coach the Bengals from beyond the grave. So this is Hugh Jackson's real moment. Unlike the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and unlike the Washington Redskins, you're not in a stacked division. I mean, it's a division filled with talent. Yes, don't mistake that. But it is a division in which it's on the receding end. Baltimore is growing older. Pittsburgh, they're losing their franchise leader of the past 10 plus years, and Cincinnati is Cincinnati. So. You look at it this way, the Cleveland Browns, if you had any better chance of the past 10 years or 15 years, slap me across the face with it, because I don't see as good of a chance you've ever had in terms of this 1999 through 2018 and beyond expansion team in which you've had this good of a chance. You have a great, talented roster in a division that is suffering, and I mean suffering. And on top of that, you got a litany of talent for the future, so when the older individuals get out of there, the younger individuals can take space. This is a good position for Cleveland, and I know we say that pretty often. I expected them to do pretty well last year, and they fucking folded to 0-16, but this season I think they'll improve. I like their chances, I like their position, and don't fuck it up. And then number one, probably a little bit of a surprise. I think when you heard me say Hugh Jackson, you knew I was saving somebody probably obvious, but at the same time a little out there in terms of discussion over the case with number one, Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this is not because I'm a 49ers fan, nor is it because I hate the Seahawks. I do hate the Seahawks, and I love my 49ers, but with Pete Carroll, it's a case like this. I don't necessarily think he's on the hot seat in terms of a firing. I think he's on the hot seat in terms of firing or quitting, resigning, and going elsewhere. He was the head coach of the Patriots, got fired, went to USC. USC started to have to rebuild, and he ended up skipping town for the Seattle Seahawks. And then the Seattle Seahawks, now they're in a rebuilding kind of phase. He was when he inherited the team, he was building. He wasn't rebuilding. He was building. And he was building with players like Marshawn Lynch, who he got from the Buffalo Bills. He was building with Matt Hasselbeck. He was building with a quarterback like Matt Hasselbeck, who was there, and he was good, and he was a great leader for the Seahawks. And obviously then he was able to draft talent, and he was able to pick up talent and scout talent that was going to help the Seahawks succeed a few years going down the line. He obviously helped assemble the Legion of Boom and Richard Sherman, Jeremy Lane, Michael Bennett, Cam Chancellor, you get the picture, so on and so forth. He was able to see a lot of success from guys like Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin. And in terms of that kind of mindset, he had a stacked team. He won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks. He made it to another Super Bowl that he did not win with the Seahawks, but he made it to another Super Bowl as well. It was a perennial playoff contender in terms of the fact that he was able to beat out teams like a dominant, kind of super team of sorts with the San Francisco 49ers. He was able to beat down teams like the Rams, who we're never going to succeed under Jeff Fisher, but at the same time weren't, somebody you could take lightly. And obviously the Arizona Cardinals, who after the 49ers kind of went downhill, the Cardinals started picking up the reins and started becoming dominant. He was able to, to match up with the best of them. But now the Seahawks are back in a rebuilding state. Richard Sherman, gone with the 49ers. Cam Chancellor, gone. Jeremy Lane, gone. Marshawn Lynch, long gone. Russell Wilson's still there, but Jimmy Graham, gone, Michael Bennett, gone. At least will be gone. I believe Jeremy Lane's still there, but I think that's about it. This has never been the healthiest of teams. This has never been the best assembled team of all time. But I think Pete Carroll is on the hot seat in terms of the fact that I think if he can't succeed now, especially when they were expected to succeed last year, and especially what they dropped to last year after their conclusion of the season the year beforehand, I'm going to be honest with you, in this kind of case, I think Pete Carroll's on the hot seat in terms of the fact that I think if he doesn't succeed this year, then management will kind of look at him in a different light and want to go a different direction. And, well, with this team, it could go one of two ways, especially with Pete Carroll. A guy like Pete Carroll, he could either get fired, or he could pick up a job as a collegiate coach somewhere else, or he could pick up a coach as a head coach in the NFL somewhere else. Overall, I think he's the biggest member on the hot seat, and gonna quite frank with you, I don't see any of these guys really making it past this year without some form of success. I think Hugh Jackson can manage to do it if he makes it to at least 6-10. I don't think Dirk Cutter will make it out alive. I don't think Jay Gruden will make it out alive. Todd Bowles, there's a little bit of a speculation surrounding him, but I'm gonna give it kind of like a 50-50 shot. And Pete Carroll, I don't expect much from him either. He's not working with a very talented team, especially since the Rams are dominant, the 49ers are hot and young and going on, and the Cardinals aren't too shabby themselves either. Make all the jokes about a retirement team you want, but I don't see a lot of room for them to fail heavily. The Seahawks could very well be the basement dwellers of the NFC West, and while as a 49ers fan that, have gotten our ass kicked by the Seahawks the past 5 years, it's going to be fantastic to beat them at least once or twice this year. And on top of that, it's going to be nice to not be the basement dwellers again. So, I mean, that's your case, and that's your little story, I guess. That's what you got to work with, and that's what I'm going to be working with. So, yeah, going to move on to the next topic. Everybody ready? Now put me at 74. 0.5. All right, ready to move on.